All right. So let's see. I guess we just finished SLPs yesterday. Um, so nice job again with the service learning projects and with the presentations. Um, Drop a short video of your presentation into the shared drive if you like before Friday if you want a few points of extra credit. Um, And yeah, so what I was planning on doing today was talking about Android um, and developing applications under Android using Android Studio. Um, why are we talking about this? Well, this is another way that we can use Java. And working under Android Studio, which is basically IntelliJ, very similar to what we did in Eclipse with using Window Builder and Swing to make GUIs. A very, very different framework underneath for how what you might do in a drag and drop development system is translated into something that turns into executable code, and a fundamentally different approach to an operating system. Android is very different from Linux. Processes under Android are very different from processes under Linux. But we can be sort of agnostic to a lot of that in our development, and we can just sort of put our head down and write Java code and make stuff happen. So I wanted to spend today just kind of like doing a high level overview of this and seeing some specifics on how we can work with Android. And so I am not, extremely proficient with this subject. I've made apps in here that do, cool things and so on and so forth, but I am not what I would consider a high level developer. I'm not well versed in best practices. I'm not well versed in a lot of the conventions and so on and so forth. I kind of like dig into it in whatever parts I need to do what I'm trying to do, and it's kind of a knuckle dragging experience, but it works. And if you're not trying to make a well maintained app that you're going to commercialize, if you just want to do something, um, this is a useful thing to have in your toolkit. And we have smartphones and we use them as communication devices. Once in a while we use them to actually make a phone call to someone. But even if you don't use this as a phone, this is an amazing platform, right? These things are really, really inexpensive, right? You see them if you go to Safeway, you're standing in line at Starbucks and you look over and there's a thing of newspapers and bags of ice and a wall of cell phones, and they're 20-30 bucks, and most of them run Android, which means that you can write Java code and dump it onto this device and execute it. And you've got a display, you've got a touch screen, most likely you have sensors inside like an accelerometer that can detect orientation, can detect motion. A lot of these will have a GPS receiver, so you can do positioning information. Plus, some sort of radio, so you can send and receive text messages, emails, get onto an internet connection, and open up sockets and all the stuff that we've been doing, right? And it's nice form factor. They last a long time, self-contained, etc., etc. And we can develop apps for this. And you don't need licenses or permission or fees or anything like that. You can literally just plug your phone into your computer, and we're going to develop in Android Studio. We'll play around with a virtual device, but when we're ready, we can just plug this phone in and say, download this app to the phone, and bingo, there it is. And so it's pretty fun. And it's kind of nice to get outside the box once in a while to develop a program that does something more than just read in input from a keyboard and print out output. As exciting as that can be, It's cool to play with actual hardware. Um, so another disclaimer I will make is that a lot of what I'm going to do is following a lot of things I've done in the past, as far as downloading Android Studio, installing it, going through the whole update cycle, creating a virtual device, all these things. I did not want to go through all of that today. That's pretty, uh, it's one-time stuff that you do, and there's tons of tutorials. If you go to, I think it's developer.android.com, there's lots of quick start guides for how to download Studio software, install it, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm starting from a bit of an advantaged position where I already have this stuff set up. So when you start Android Studio, you get a window like this. Recent projects are listed over here, and then you have some options on this side. Yeah, turn off USB debugging and that sort of stuff. And for today, I've actually got, this is my old Essential phone, so it's no longer supported. It was a beautiful phone. It was unbranded, and no bloatware, and it worked great. Still has great battery life, but not supported anymore. So no updates and so on. So I've actually got it in airplane mode, so it doesn't show you embarrassing text messages and stuff. But even in airplane mode with the radio turned off and so on, we can still do a lot of cool stuff with this. All right, so I'm going to start a new Android Studio project. And trickiest thing is figuring out what application template to start with. And I think empty activity works best. Basic activity gives you some other stuff that you need to kind of get rid of. No activity doesn't give you enough, so this is kind of like, sweet spot for me. So we'll just say empty activity, and for the name, I'm just going to do CSE223. And there's a package name. I've already told it, to use comcellmatrix.application name. That's my domain, and all this other stuff, you have to set up as usual. All right, let's look at language. You have a choice of two languages, Java and Kotlin. Kotlin is newer, and to me, it's kind of a relaxed version of Java. It has less stringent typing, but it's Java, it's C, it's objects. It's not fundamentally different to me, and that may simply be because I'm not a whiz at Kotlin. But, we're doing Java in here. I'm just going to stick with Java. I've used Kotlin before, and it's doable. It's not a bad experience, but I'm used to Java. So we're going to go with Java. You do have to specify what SDK you want to use. So this is the Software Development Kit SDK. And you have a range of choices. So if you go back to, ice cream sandwich, and yes, I had an Android like one phone. But, if you go back to Android 4, it tells you your app will run on approximately 100% of devices. Yeah, KitKat was cool, too. If you go with Android 30, it says it'll run on less than 1% of devices. So, as Android develops and it goes through different versions, code that you write for one version may not work on a newer version, but more often code you develop for a new version may not work on an older phone. Yeah, they just kind of have a Flappy Bird thing now instead of like Easter eggs. So I'm just going to go with the one I recommended, which was 12. That was Lollipop, so 94% of devices. Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, it used to be if you went to the About information, and it showed you the version of Android, you could tap on it like 10 times or something, and it would open up a little game or a little animation or something like that. But people are saying it doesn't do that anymore, which is too bad. All right, so we're going to go with API 21, right? Application Programming Interface. So APIs are basically how you interact with something. It's that abstract data type business we keep talking about. All right, so we're set up here, and mostly I'm just going to take defaults on this. In the future, I would just specify a name and just click through to finish. So we do this, and we get an integrated development environment. And it's similar in spirit to Eclipse, right? We have an editing window over here. We have a tabbed view, of course. You have a file system browser over here for files related to your projects. And as soon as you blink, you've got, a million directories and a bunch of files created on your behalf, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of standard IDE experience. So this is Java code. Main activity is, the app that we're writing. It's an extension of this base class. It uses the base class's onCreate method. In the beginning of its onCreate. And this is a little bit like what happens with a constructor, but not really. But when an application is started, right, it's created, and this method will be called. And you can do initializations in here if you like. Cool. All right. So Android is different from Linux. In Linux, you run a program, and a process is created, and it starts executing the code in your program. And if it gets to a return statement, or if it errors out, the program exits and it's gone, right? Android, the life cycle of an application is very different. Your apps tend to be hanging around most of the time, but going through different states. When you click on an app and you see it, on your display, it's in this active state. If another app takes over the display, or if you hit the home button, that app you were running does not necessarily exit. It goes into different states, and at some point it might be caused to exit by Android if it decides it needs resources and so on and so forth. But it's not as linear of a life cycle as a program in, say, Unix. All right, so that's one difference. So come over here to App and come down to Resources and Layout. And I'm going to close this activity main.xml because it always says Design Editor is unavailable. So I'm just going to close that out. But I'm going to double click on activity main.xml. And that's going to bring up a kind of drag and drop window. And this is what my application would look like right now. So it's just got this text view in the middle that says Hello World, and it's got some squiggly lines, some resistors, right? And if I were to run this right now, this is what my display would look like. All right, so I've got this linked up to my Essential phone right now, and if I say go ahead and run, and I say run the app, and I come back here and look at my phone, we'll see if this works or not. Oh, there we go. All right, so there's my app, and it says Hello World, right? And it's called CSE223. And I can come over here, and there's my CSE223. And I can drop it right there and run it anytime I want. All right, so that's our basic Hello World. We also have the option of, yeah, it is beautiful, right? We'll also have the option of using a virtual device, and depending on your hardware, right, taking your application from, coding it up, compiling it, putting it onto a device, running it. On this system that I have, it's very fast. Not a lot of lag and so on and so forth. I've seen fast Windows systems where this takes minutes to do. I've seen slower Windows systems where this goes pretty quickly. So I don't know what all the parameters there are, but if you're doing Android development, try to get a setup that's working pretty efficiently. And if it's not, do some digging around, see what you can change. Because you don't want to be hindered by having to wait for um, your app to start and so on and so forth. All right, so one thing we can do is we can use a virtual device. So there's if we come under tools, there's this AVD manager, so Android virtual devices, and this will basically let you create a virtual phone. And so there's different varieties. There's some Samsung and lots of Pixels. And you can do wearable devices. You can do an Android TV. Do people actually have Android TVs, or are they fictitious? Automotive and so on. And you can choose, what size screen, resolution, how much memory you're gonna have. Does it have a flash drive? All this kind of stuff. So I've already made one of these. This was using API 28, and it was just a Pixel 3. And so I can come over here and select that. And then if I say go ahead and run my application. So I couldn't get this to work this morning, but we'll see if it works now. Alright, so I have the giant phone that ate St. Louis over here. Let me make it smaller. That's a reasonable sized phone. Let me turn it on. Alright, and there's our app. And this emulator is pretty nice. Now this used to be like a real performance dog. This was just like nightmare scenario trying to use this thing. It's actually pretty fast now. And it's, pretty much a full emulated phone. So I mean, it knows what time it is. It's got our apps. There's our CSE223 app. So I'm just going to drag that to the top here so I can run it when I want. But it's also, I can bring up a web browser and we can hit the shared code page and click through on that and so on and so forth, right? So it's piggybacking on my actual Wi-Fi connection, which is why it knows the time and all that sort of stuff. So you can go to the Play Store, you can download apps, right? I can bring up my maps but all the stuff it wants me to log in, I'm not going to log into my Google account. But if you do, right, you can actually use this stuff. It doesn't have a GPS inside, but you can go into the AVD manager and say pretend that this is my latitude, longitude, and so on. But it's got all this stuff. So this is a nice emulator, and we can put our apps on here, and we don't actually need physical hardware to do our development. I am super duper CPU challenged right now with Zoom and recorders and Studio and an AVD, but that just makes it fun. Yeah, the Bash client was cool, but yeah, we should do an Android NetDot or Android sticks, or both. All right, so this is fairly painless, right? So I can click here and I can come into the text, for example, and I can change this to this is a test, and now if I run this activity and I look over here, it'll go ahead and start it once it downloads. And there we go, it says this is a test. So I can just leave this up, and every time that I change my code and I say run, it will upload it to this virtual device, and it will go ahead and re-execute it. Um, all right. So the next thing about this is in Window Builder, when we drag and drop components, it's writing Java code for us, right? Which says, construct a J panel and make its dimensions this and locate it here, and then add a J button with this dimension, and so on and so forth. With this software, when we design a GUI with this drag and drop, what it's doing is it's creating a bunch of XML, right? So this is just like a markup language. And I can switch over to the code view here or the GUI view here, or I can do both in the middle. So if we switch over to the code, this is the code that corresponds to that GUI that we've got. And there's a text area, and it says this is a test. And if I change this, to say ha ha ha, I've got VI wired in here, so if I change that and I go back over here, right now this text view is saying ha ha ha. So these are linked, right? Instead of writing Java code, it's writing a description of your GUI in XML, and then there's something that will read that XML and use that to actually draw your display when your app runs. So that's nice. That's a nod to portability and so on and so forth. Another thing is, this line of text is this line of XML is highlighted, and it says hard-coded string ha 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 should use @string resource. So better practice is considered if you have text, right, that's intended for human ingestion, like here I'm saying ha ha ha, or this is a test. You'd like to avoid hardwiring that. You don't really want to put that in your Java code. You don't really want to put that in your XML. What you prefer to do is put all of your text strings into a separate file, which is another XML file, and then have these things be references to content in that file. Right, so it's another layer of indirection. So the string appearing on the text view is coming from the XML, which is getting it from this other strings file. Okay, why do we have another level of indirection there? Because if you wanted to make a version of your app that works in a different language, right, like this, I need to go through and I need to say, okay, I need to translate ha 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 into Italian. But I don't want to translate, match underscore parent, because that's something that's being used by, something controlling the layout. So I need to know which things in my XML and my Java need to be translated and so on. So if I make this an indirect reference to a string inside my strings file, all I got to do is have, a different strings file for different languages. And I can just point to which one I want to use, and bingo, I've got, different versions of my code that display things in different languages. So this is a nod to internationalization and such, and that's helpful. But we're going to be lazy programmers today, so I'm just going to leave this hardwired in here. The other thing is there's a manifest file, which is also an XML file, and this sort of describes like the overall application. So, are you allowed to back up? What's the label on it? The launcher is round, and so on and so forth, right? And this is where you would put in requests for permission. So if all right, have a good one, John. So if you wanted to use, the telephone, for example, you can put something in here which says, hey, this application needs these permissions, and then when you try to run this, it will pop up and say, hey, do you want to give this thing permission? I don't know if I can quickly. Let me see if I can find something. looking to see if I can find a code snippet to drop in here. Hold on, this will be worth it. All right, let's see if this works. So I'm just going to drop something in my manifest here which says I use permission internet. So if I was going to do networking, I would need to have that permission granted in order for things like, you know, creating connections to sockets and so on, in order for those things to not throw permission exceptions. So in my manifest I can say, okay, this application uses the internet permission. So let's see what happens if we run that. Ah, that didn't do anything exciting. Maybe it doesn't ask till I actually ask to access the internet. Anyway, that, oh, I didn't mean to exit either. Anyway, that's how you set up permissions and other information about the activity itself. All right, so let's go back into the Java code, and let's make our GUI a little more interesting. So I'm going to go to the layout, and I'll look at the design window, and let's drop a button in here. And I'll label that button Go. And so again, right, this is just creating XML. So now I've got a button declaration. It's got an ID, it's got a text field, it's got X and Y position, so on and so forth. All right, so let's run this. I accidentally closed out my phone. All right, so there's the phone back, there's the haha, there's the go. And it's a button, I can click it and so on. But the button's up here in the upper left, even though I put it down here below the text view. And so if I click on this button, I get some messages over here, right? Not horizontally constrained, not vertically constrained. So there's a layout manager to worry about, right? You can't just drop a button here and have it end up here. When you're writing an app for a phone, right, there's so many different phones with so many different screen sizes, resolutions. You've got, you know, 2 orientations you can put your phone in. And so there's a manager that will make your GUI hopefully look reasonable, depending on, you know, the physical layout of the display and such. So if we just drop a button in here and we don't do anything to place it, it goes to the upper left, because upper left is always safe. So basically, click on your object, click and hold on one of those circles, and you can make a constraint that, you know, connects it to the top, for example, or the bottom, or the left or the right. And there's better ways to do this, but the way that I know to do it, I just put constraints, you know, to all 4 sides, and now I can place this exactly where I want. And the text view that we started with was the same thing. So if I run this, and I look in here, my button should end up down here. So that's a little better. All right, back into the Java. So let's make that button do something. Um, all right, so we're going to make a method for handling a button click. So this is going to be public void click it. And it takes an argument of type view. And I'm going to have to coax it into noticing that I've got errors. So I'll just try to build it. And so, you know, things will get highlighted if there's a problem. So view, it doesn't know what that is, but I can say import class, and it will go ahead and import it. And this is you know, similar to an Eclipse thing, right? And we can collapse chunks of code, so we don't have to look at all of those, and so on and so forth. All right, so we've got a routine that's suitable for being called from a an event. If we go back to, and I don't know why I get two of these popping up. If we go back here and we click on the Go button and we scroll down, we'll find a item called onClick. And if I hit the drop-down box for that, I have click it, right? Because of the signature of that method, that's now available to be called when we click this button. So I'm going to say click it, and you know, one more time, if we look at the XML, here's the button, and the onClick property is a method called click it. All right, so all this means that, you know, once I run this app, if I hit the Go button, it should hop into this piece of code right here. All right, so so what should we do in here? Well, we don't have a console. We can't system out print line, but we can make a pop-up window. I don't even know what that's talking about. This is IntelliJ stuff. All right, so let's just make a pop-up message when we click the button. So the way you make a pop-up is toast, right? It's a joke. Toast.makeText, and let's import toast. And so we need a context and then a label and a message. So for context, what works well is just get application context. And then a message that we want to display. So we'll say hello. And then you can specify how long you want this message to be displayed. So we're going to do toast.length_short. All right. So all of this defines a text object, and this comes with a show method, so we can say .show. A lot of Android, for me at least, is figuring out how to do something and then just doing it again and again. So when I want to make something pop up on the screen, I do this. And I have this code, you know, somewhere, and if I know I need to make a pop-up, I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to set my message, I'm going to set the length to be short or long or whatever, and so on. So let's go ahead and run this. Alright, so there's our app, there's a ha ha ha. We click the button, and we get a little pop-up down here that says hello. And it shows for a few seconds and then goes away. Alright, so what do we got? We've got a way to design a GUI. We've got a way to tie a button action or other actions to code. We've got a way to display information while our program is running. All right, so we're building up the toolkit of things that we're used to doing in Java and Eclipse and Swing, and finding ways to do those here. All right, let's manipulate this text view. So I'm going to close out this manifest. Come back here and look at this text view. Okay, so right now it's just holding a string. Ha ha ha. It's got an ID called text view. Let me change the name of this to message. Okay, that's the name of the object basically. So now the text view is called message. And what I'd like to do is when you click the button, I would like to change the text being displayed in that text view. And there's a set text method, just like with text fields. But we need to get a hold of that object somehow. And it's a little indirect the way that we do this in Java. So so I'm going to do something like this: text view. I'll just call it TV equals, and we use a method called find view by ID, and we pass to that r.id the name of the thing in our layout window that we want to access. I don't know if we can scroll to it in here. It's called message. Yeah, it's right there, message. All right, and I need to import this. And I could do this up here in the onCreate method, so I don't do this every time the button's clicked, but for now we'll just do it right here. So this gets me an object TV, which is a text view, which should correspond to this text field right here. And so I can say TV.setText, and we'll just change it to something like that so it's obvious if it changes. And then let's go ahead and run this. Alright, so if I hit the go button, the text view changes and we get a pop-up. So now we can do Java-like things. And let me make this a little more reasonable. So I'll declare my text view up here, and I'll go ahead and give it a value up here in the onCreate method. Alright, so same effect, but a little cleaner code. So let's count how many clicks we get. So down here, I'm going to set the text to be I'll just print out number of clicks and the value of count. I'll increment count. And then every fifth tick, we'll go ahead and put a little pop-up message. So here's our app. We've got clicks 1, 2, 3, 4. When we get to 5, we get a pop-up. 6, 7, 8, 9, and there's 10, and so on. So we're writing Java code, right? And we're interacting with widgets. And with that much, you're pretty close to being able to make your dots game, your net dots certainly stick. high, low, whatever. So the ways that the specifics of how you do certain things are different under Android from, say, Swing. So for example, if you want to, um, you know, declare a extension of a class where you can make a paint method to do some drawing to make a field of dots and sticks and so on, right? They've got different names, but it's exactly the same thing, right? The biggest difference is there's a lot more sort of structure inside Android. You have to work with the system a lot more than you do in, say, Swing, or certainly in something like C. But once you know how to interact with that system, or more importantly, how to look up information on that interacting with that system, it's the same kinds of things, right? You extend a class and then you define something like a paint method, but it's not called paint. And you do your drawing in there, and you use something like a graphics object, but it's not a graphics object. And it's the same stuff, right? And you make methods and classes, and you've got fields and event handlers and so on and so forth. All right, so let's see, larger view of things. So a lot of control around Android. Applications run, in kind of sandboxes. Everything is constrained. If you wanted to open a socket, to a server and do some communication, for example, you can't put that code inside here. You'll get an error saying you're trying to do network stuff from the main activity. That's not allowed, right? Why? Because if you click on an application and it starts running and it tries to use the network, and it hangs up, then your phone looks like it's hung, right? And for whatever reason, later versions of Android, you have to do your network stuff in a separate thread. It's a requirement, right? It won't compile your app otherwise, or it'll compile it. It will give you an error when you try to run it. So you've got to make a thread, and then in that thread you go ahead and you make your socket and connect to the server and all that kind of stuff. But it's the same stuff. And so yeah, if I switch this over to Essential Products, which is my phone, and I go ahead and say run app, then it comes up on here, and I can click my button and get my little pop-up message and so on. And if I send if I click my home button to go back to my home screen, and then I hit the button to run the app again, I'm still sitting at a count of 20, right? Going home did not terminate my program. Hitting this did not start my program from the beginning where I said count is equal to 1. That application is still running, right? It's not dead. It's kind of backgrounded. If I do this and force it to go away, and then I come back here and click this, now I'm back to the beginning with the old value of the text field and so on, and my count starting from 1. So that's a little different, but that's okay. Last thing to look at. So we don't have a console we can print messages on, right? But we have a text toast option that we can use to pop up something, but that's not terribly convenient. So let's look at a better way to do this. Let's come in here and let's add a log message. So log message, log.I, so I means information, and we can specify a category of message and then the actual message itself. So this first tag, I'm just going to say CSE223, and then I'm going to print a message here like click received, count equals, and I'll print out the count. And you have to import log. Alright, so if I take this and I run it, let me go back to my emulator. I can run it on my phone. That's fine. So we'll go ahead and run this. And, you know, I've got my app back. I can click it and so on and so forth. Alright, I can come here to a window called Log Catch. And this is set up to my Essential phone. And I can say, show me all messages corresponding to this application. And, you know, all these messages are popping up here on the side. And I'm going to hit the Go button. And there's the message saying, you know, click received, count equals 4. If I hit it again, there's a message, click received, count equals 5. And, you know, I'm getting lots of other messages here, most of which I have no idea what they mean. I can click this, so instead of showing things related to this application, I can say don't filter my output. And, you know, I could look at just errors. And so these are just errors that are going on. Who knows what these are. This will show warnings, but I can be verbose and I can see all the information related to what's happening on my phone. So for example, if I hit my home button, I get a whole bunch of messages, right? Including, you know, some permission denial and things like that. Here's my text message button, and that does some stuff. And so this is a nice way to sort of monitor what's going on your phone, and particularly code you're writing. If you use the log, the I method, the D method for debug, E for error, and so on, you can put out information that you want to see while your application is running. You can pick it up in here, and that's probably your most useful way to debug code while you're developing it. All right, so documentation. A lot of this is just sort of figuring out how you're supposed to play well with others in Android. So, for example, Android GPS interface. All right, just about anything will take me to developer.android.com. That's your best friend. Right, so this is actually a really good resource. It's got a number of guides that are actually very usable. So if you want to know about using GPS, right, this tells you how you add the permission tag to the manifest file. There's sample code. A lot of this will offer you sample code in both Kotlin and Java. And so these are you know, different tutorials. These are actually really good. This is what I started with originally. Build your first app. Really kind of takes you through step by step from nothing to up and running. And then you can also go to reference, and you can actually get to the API documentation. And hey, I got my badge. And dig into the details if you want to know, you know, what the methods are in different classes and so on and so forth. So that's a really high level overview, very fast, quick and dirty of doing stuff on Android, right? But hopefully enough to get you off and running. If you've never done this before, this is enough to get you to the point where you can take what you know about Java and threads and sockets and GUIs and all that kind of stuff, and actually start doing some stuff on an Android device. And you know, you can emulate it, or if you have an Android phone, you can actually put it on the hardware, and then you can take it and show it to your friends and say, hey, here's what I do. I'm a computer scientist, and you can like get oohs and ahs and so on. All right, so we're past time here. Have a good afternoon. I will see you tomorrow. We'll talk about some more data structures tomorrow, and then Friday we'll wrap up the course. Should I take a survey and give away all my personal information? No. All right, have a good one. Thanks, everybody.